Hello and welcome to my channel. Right up front, I have to tell two things. First, this is not a movie critic channel. I just post my art and drawings, my art progression videos, and because of that, you are watching me drawing something completely unrelated to the topic and a little gory, but I just happen to have recorded this one and there needs to be something on the screen while I'm talking, so I put it there. And I have some opinions about this matter, this Meteor Man controversy, and instead of opening up a new channel, I decided to post this here. Second, I don't want anyone to think that this is a clickbait video, so I'm going to tell who this Meteor Man is, or who I believe he is going to be, right in the beginning. He is Gandalf. But this is only my prediction. I'm 75% sure that he is Gandalf. Other 25 I'm going to talk about at the end. I don't have any source, any proof, and I'm not even a Tolkien nerd. I haven't read the Silmarillion, I haven't read the Unfinished Tales, I haven't even read the whole Rings trilogy. I just watched Peter Jackson's movies numerous times, I might add, so I'm just what you may call a normie. I don't know what happens in the Second Age, who lives in the Second Age, and who don't live in those times. I know nothing. So, does that make me qualified to make a prediction? Maybe not. And if you think that, you may stop watching the rest, no hard feelings. But my argument is, yes it does. And maybe, in some ways, it makes me more qualified to make a prediction in this matter. But I'm not claiming that my argument is rock solid. I could very well be wrong and you may find my arguments weak. So, with those out of the way, oh yes, one more thing. I will not make a judgment about the show's quality, whether it's good or bad. I don't care right now. It's not the subject of this video. And I will not judge whether this Meteor Man being Gandalf is a right choice or not. I'll just state what I think is obvious, that's it. So let's start. When Amazon released the character posters, everyone was guessing who they might be. I only guessed 3 of them because for a normie like myself, only those 3 were obvious. The other ones required knowledge other than the Peter Jackson movies. So this one was Sauron, this sword was Narsil, and this was a Hobbit. I clicked on a video about these posters. The guy I was watching was very knowledgeable about Tolkien lore, and when he started talking about these pictures, he didn't just come out and say Sauron, Narsil, and Hobbit. He counted other names, sword names, characters which I've never heard of, and he was asking, is this a farmer? Their hands are muddy, so they might be dealing with soil. And I was like, why aren't you saying Hobbit? They are clearly hobbits. And then he said they can't be hobbits, because in the Second Age there are no hobbits. Okay, and that's why. But then it turns out that there were ancestors of hobbits, logically, and these were those ancestors. And it turns out that this sword is Narsil. So I'm 2 out of 3 right now, and I'm fairly certain that this is Sauron. And if I'm wrong, then it's Morgoth, I believe. I don't know, that's not the point. The point is, after watching that video, I made a comment under it, and he gave a heart to that, thanks to him by the way. I said, you sir might be experiencing some sort of occupational hazard. Since you know so much about Tolkien and his writings, you tend to make your comments in the confines of that lore. Like, this cannot be Narsil because it shouldn't have been broken. I mean, maybe it's a flash forward image, why not? Or no hobbits in the texts, so these are not hobbits. Are you sure? Because there are other factors and you need to see beyond those borders of Tolkien lore. You need to see that This is a product, $1 billion investment aiming to make that money back many times over. And you can't do that. I mean, maybe you can, but why risk it? These people, the investors, the producers, they think that they can only do that by defining their target audience, not the Tolkien nerds, but all of us. And there are more normies than Tolkien nerds. They say to us, look, this is what you know. This is familiar grounds. This is the nostalgia, the member berries. You say, come, give us your money and we will give you what you feel comfortable watching. The hobbits, the big bad guy Sauron, the Narsil, Galadriel, Elrond, and probably Gandalf. I dare say even Legolas is in the cards. And Thranduil, that's all I know. And this is the core of my argument. You are not the target audience. We are. We, the normies who don't know which wizard came when, which bad guy emerged, which age. They can even put Gandalf in the first age. I wouldn't know. So what could be the counter arguments to this meteor man being Gandalf? Now, I can't 100% guess what they could be, but again, that's not the point. I don't need to know the counter arguments. The only important question is this: is him being Gandalf breaks the story? Because when you adapt something, you can change a lot of things. Peter Jackson did, but it only becomes a problem when your change breaks the story. I mean, you can give Glorfindel's lines and actions to Arwen and it did not break the story. It was a big change. And if you did that today, oh, what a backlash you would get today. But let's not get sidetracked. And you can make that change while staying in the confines of the story. But can you kill Aragorn and make Boromir king instead? No. It's not only a bigger change. If you do that, the story cannot progress the way it does in the books. Boromir cannot use the dead army, for one thing, and many other things. So it comes down to this. What's the limit of your freedom? Gandalf is not in the second age, I guess. But can he be around, not engaging, only being a spectator with the Hobbit character with his side, like Bilbo in Battle of Five Armies? Gandalf wouldn't go down in history books, but he would be around. He wouldn't know who he is and what he is throughout the series. Maybe he discovers himself more and more and becomes the Gandalf we know in the final season. Can this happen? Does this break the story? I have to give an example of a change that breaks a story. And we can skip this if you want. I want to talk about the adaptation of Foundation. Now, when it comes to Foundation, I'm not a normie. I have read all the books and a chunk of other Asimov books to call myself a nerd, and I hate the TV show Foundation. There are lots of reasons for my hate, but I'm going to give only one example here. When Asimov wrote those books, there was no notion of cyberpunk technology, and they did not imagine a scientist would be able to upload his consciousness to a computer for the next generations to interact with. So the basic premise of those books, the scientist Harry Seldon invented a science called psychohistory to basically predict the future. It's not that, but let's say it is for simplicity's sake. So when the Foundation faces a crisis, he would have foreseen that, and he makes recordings of how the Foundation will overcome those crises. But no one can watch those recordings before they overcome the crisis. Now in the show, Seldon uploads his consciousness to the computer and appears as a hologram in the times of crisis. But then what's the point? The whole premise of the story is Seldon seeing the future and not telling the Foundation because the crises are societal crises. and they should be overcome by lack of choice. It's inevitable, some kind of deterministic future. And the appeal of the story is making us, the reader, ask, what's the answer? Did Selden really see this? And how is this a societal crisis, not a personal one? And every time a crisis is solved, it's like hearing a good punchline or solving a mystery. That was the appeal of Foundation. David Goyer threw that in the garbage and made a show we do not have any reason to watch. And that's why not only Asimov nerds did not like the show, even the normies did not like it. That is a story breaker change. Selden should be dead, and no one should be able to interact with him. Gender change of Salvor Hardin is not a big deal. Making Gale Dornick seemingly immortal is not a big deal. Those changes do not break the story. You see what I mean? So, Gandalf being around in the Second Age, can you consider that as disruptive as that? I don't know, but something tells me it's not. Look, one of my favorite shows is Rome, and if you have watched that, I think you remember these two. These were my favorite characters, and not only mine, in the whole show. Not Caesar, not Augustus. These were the focus of attention, and they were around. They engaged in important things, and Titus Pullo was the real father of Caesar's son. I mean, is that really happened? Of course not. But they were our guides in this ancient period. Cannot Gandalf and this Harfoot be our Titus and Lucius? What do you say? And Gandalf, not being called Gandalf, how can we know he is Gandalf? I imagined some scenes like Harfoot wakes up from her sleep and turns the other way, sees the Meteor Man, sleeps with his eyes open. Yay, that's Gandalf. Or maybe he and the Harfoot has a road trip throughout the series. They meet Galadriel. Gandalf wants to talk to her, but he's stopped by Galadriel's guards. Galadriel helps him on his feet and picks a flock of his hair, pulls it the other side. Yay, he's Gandalf. Now, these scenes are just examples of how you can tell that he is Gandalf. They're not good scenes, I know. And I doubt Ian McKellen would reprise his role. So you have to cast a young actor, maybe resembling a young Ian McKellen, and you have to use some scenes like these to tell the audience that he is Gandalf. Between the time I wrote this whole thing and started to record it, I thought a bunch of other scenes, and I really want to talk about them. But I don't know, even this video will be watched, so if this gets some attention, I'll talk about them in a second part, or else I'll just crawl in my bed and cry. The rest of this video is just me doubling down on my argument. There will be nothing new, and I won't hold it against you if you just click off. Now, I have watched a video recently, and in that video, a guy, another Tolkien nerd, said the Meteor Man cannot be Sauron. And after that he gave his reason. I think he did not give the whole reason, he got sidetracked, but I'll assume that the reason he gave is the only reason. He said it cannot be Sauron because Sauron in the book came from the east. That's it. I mean, of course the reason is probably not only that, but if it is, then it's not a compelling reason. It's a changeable thing. Coming from the east or coming from the sky for a supernatural being, I don't see how that's unbreakable for a showrunner. You can break that. You can change that when adapting. Of course, you'll receive some hate, but in the end, if you tell the story competently and if you show that you're sincere, in time, you will be forgiven. It's what Peter Jackson experienced. No one holds it against him for making those numerous changes. Faramir's character, taking the ring to, I'm blanking the name, Osgiliath, I think it was, taking the ring there, taking the elves to Helm's Deep, Tom Bombadil, and so on. So you have the artistic license to make changes, as long as you make the audience feel that you're sincere. Now, is that the case here? I don't know. I mean, the money guys, they want only profit, that's for sure. But the filmmakers, they sometimes have passion to tell a story. That's how we get good movies. Even those good movies are made for profit, but there are passionate storytellers behind them. Again, I'm not saying that's the case here. I don't know if these guys are sincere or evil incarnate. I don't know. I'm not judging. I'm just assuming that they have some sort of passion to tell a story. Because my argument is, sometimes using these member berries are not necessarily bad or insincere. And they mostly are, I know, but sometimes they are not. I mean, most of you went completely nuts in certain Mandalorian episodes. Were they insincere, or Filoni and Favreau had some passion to give you Skywalker? Most of you think the latter. But when we saw Chewbacca in the prequels, it was cheap. And they made him 190 years old in the Solo movie. Why? Why not 50 or 60? Why that higher number? Because they need to have Chewie if they make a sequel for the sequel trilogy. He needs to have a ridiculous lifespan. These non-human characters always have longer lifespans than humans because they need to use them indefinitely. Sometimes you see that cynic, money-grabbing attitude, but sometimes it's sincere. And now you have seemingly immortal characters ready for you to use. So using Gandalf, using hobbits, if sincere, it's not necessarily bad. These are tricks in the storyteller's arsenal. I mean, storytelling itself is a trick. Okay, sometimes the money guys dictate you to use the familiar characters to attract the audience and make money, and the storyteller wants to use those characters to appease the audience and tell a story. And their aims coincide sometimes. Is it the case here? I don't know, but it's time for me to wrap up. I said I'm 75% sure it is Gandalf. The other 25 are 20% for Sauron, 4% for Saruman, and 1% for Blue Wizards. My argument is it has to be someone familiar to us normies. That's the case here. But of course, I could be so wrong. If you have watched until here and liked the video, I would very much appreciate a thumbs up. And despite this is an art channel, you might consider subscribing. And that's it for me today. See you hopefully in the next videos. Bye.